Did Burkhard Heim work for a secret space program? At least in the USA. Some bloggers claim that he did. In this video, I want to get at the bottom of this matter. Hello and welcome to 6 Dimensions in Color. My name is Schmid, and on this channel I explain to you the worldview of Burkhard Heim in understandable language and with clear examples. In a time of huge steps towards UFO disclosure, the question arises: did the US actually salvage these crafts, or did they even back engineer some of them? Of course, you never know what really to believe, and there's so much being claimed, and some is also downright disinformation. The term fake news sums it up nicely, but fake news is not an invention of the information age. Fake news have always existed, and today I want to demystify a particular piece that concerns Burkhard Heim. But first, if you want to train your psychic immune system against all sorts of negative influences, negative energy, manipulation, wrong or superfluous information, the best thing you can do is NATHAL training. NATHAL not only increases your intuition, but dramatically upgrades your emotional intelligence. It unlocks dormant brain functions, making you much more sovereign and involved and saturated with all kinds of information and energies. All that and more works since 1980. If you're curious, go to my website nathaltraining.ie, visit my Instagram channel, and I'd be happy to see you in one of my next courses. Many of you will know Kurt Jaimungal and his channel Theories of Everything. I even have received comments from some of you saying you should talk on this channel about Burkhard Heim. Well, I'm willing to, waiting for the invitation. Anyway, Kurt once published a documentary feature about the topic of anti-gravity. I'll link the video right here at the right time index. This video talks about how in the 1950s the topic of anti-gravity was taken seriously by many prominent researchers, money was put behind it, and it was really something that rose high expectations. A certain Martin company was founded back then, predecessor of the notorious Lockheed-Martin company, who built the stealth bomber and allegedly possesses salvaged UFO materials. And in this video it is mentioned that none other than Burkhard Heim worked for this Martin company. Personally, I never believed this for a second, first intuitively, but second because I know quite a lot about Burkhard Heim's biography and attitudes. And today I want to set things right about what is stated there. And conversely, to clear Kurt of all suspicions of intentional disinformation, it really wasn't his fault. He or his colleagues did research the topic, but the sources they found were simply wrong. Actually, it points to a matter that's still a problem concerning Burkhard Heim, the lack of source material in English language. There is an English Wikipedia article about Burkhard Heim, and though Wikipedia is often rightfully criticized for being biased at controversial topics about controversial people, in this case the article is actually almost decent. There was also taken input from experts, even myself, taken into consideration, but it still contains one old passage that simply doesn't go away, and this passage claims that very thing, that Heim worked for the Martin company, and it even gives a reference and a link of where to find it. And this reference leads to the archive of the New York Herald Tribune, specifically to November 20th, Sunday of 1955 issue. Headline of the article in question is "Conquest of Gravity, Game of Scientists in US." The image shows two researchers, that's Dr. Charles Dosia and one Mr. Martin Kaplan, and I've linked the article in the video description. You can download and see it for yourself. It's not only that bad quality scan, it was also transcribed properly, so you can actually read it. And here's what it says in the crucial parts. The initial steps of an almost incredible program to solve the secret of gravity and universal gravitation are being taken today in many of America's top scientist laboratories and research centers. A number of major, long-established companies in the United States aircraft and electronics industries also are involved in gravity research. You see, the topic back then was really something mainstream that even made it to the New York Herald Tribune. Leading labs, big companies, prominent figures, all openly talking about the topic. Scientists in general bracket gravity with life itself as the greatest unsolved mystery in the universe. But there are increasing numbers who feel that there must be a physical mechanism for its propagation which can be discovered and controlled. Should this mystery be solved, it would bring about a greater revolution in power, transportation, and many other fields than even the discovery of atomic power. And today, 70 years later, this still holds true, and no one has made any progress on gravity. Funny that the article says gravity and life itself, because Burkhard Heim actually made huge contributions to both fields. The article then mentions other research groups, institutes, and individuals, and also talks about the financing. Interestingly, it was all privately funded back then. It goes on. Many scientists of repute are sure that gravity can be overcome in comparatively few years if sufficient resources are put behind the project. Others believe it may take a quarter of a century or more. As I say, it's been 70 years and no one is any wiser, at least not openly or not in mainstream. And now comes the crucial part, use of European experts. Martin Aircraft has just put under contract one of Europe's leading theoretical authorities on gravity and electromagnetic fields. Dr. Burkhard Heim of Göttingen University, where some of the outstanding discoveries of the century in aerodynamics and physics have been made. And Dr. Pascal Jordan of Hamburg University, Max Planck Medal winner, whose recent work called Gravity and the Universe has excited scientific circles throughout the world. Okay, at first, the attributes given here are clearly exaggerated. Burkhard Heim definitely was Europe's most innovative mind concerning gravity and electromagnetism at that time. It is also true that he was from Göttingen University, but he was not a doctor, and he was at that time, in 1955, a mere student. He was studying under Werner Heisenberg, Nobel Prize winner and one of the fathers of quantum physics. He definitely wasn't recognized as a leading expert. But during that time period, Heim gave a lot of public lectures in Germany, and he became well known in the German press. Here are some articles, like the famous one where he's shown in this photograph in the Stern magazine with his spaceship model. Werner Heisenberg, who was a Nobel Prize winner, was furious that one of his students dared to speak about such a topic even he did not fully understand and in fact appreciate. And now the press even gave him a doctorate. I doubt that Heisenberg ever saw this article from New York, but this was how Heim was styled publicly, much to the dislike of his teachers. He was portrayed as the new Einstein, bravely pointing into the future despite his maiming, etc. It is fair, however, to mention him in one breath with Pascal Jordan. However, Pascal Jordan already was a scientist of a lot of repute. He was much older than Heim. In fact, he was one of Heim's teachers. It goes on. Dr. Heim, now professor of theoretical physics at Göttingen, and who was a member of Germany's Bureau of Standards during World War II, is certain that gravity can be overcome. Dr. Heim lost his eyesight and hearing and had both arms blown off at the elbow in a World War II rocket explosion. He dictates his theories and mathematical calculations to his wife. So, in fact, they put Heim in Heisenberg's chair. In my opinion, would have been entirely appropriate given the nature of his genius. However, this German Bureau of Standards, I guess they're referring to Deutscher Normenausschuss, it only started existing in 1945, so it could not have been, no one could have been member during World War II. Burkhard Heim did work at an institute called the Reichsversuchsanstalt für Sprengstoffforschung, something like Imperial Research Institute for Explosives, and that's where he lost his eyesight, hearing and hands. But it wasn't a rocket that exploded, it was a small case of an explosive of his own invention. Also, his arms were not severed at the elbow, but rather at the wrist, and so he could undergo that surgery to get these cleft arms we know him with. And one last inaccuracy, though of less importance, is at that time it wasn't his wife that was writing down his thoughts, but Heim's father. The article ends by saying there's still no accepted theory of gravity at that time, and still mentions all the great names like Oppenheimer, Dyson, etc. So the information in this article were highly inaccurate, but they were not invented out of thin air. The US military and private sector did recruit many German experts after World War II, especially from the field of rocket science. Most prominent example would be Wernher von Braun. They also acquired a lot of research material and documents from German research facilities. Acquired, of course, is euphemistic for they stole it before the Russians could steal it. And Burkhard Heim did receive offers indeed. And his wife, Gerda Heim, she described one such incident in her memoirs. I'm convinced what I'm going to read to you was about an agent from that very company, and it happened in 1955. Maybe weeks or months before that article was printed, or at the same time. It didn't take too long before Burkhard received a letter in English saying that the other side was interested in his work. After some more time, an American wrote to Burkhard stating that he wanted to meet him for a discussion. Burkhard's father thought he'd rather be present after all. After all, he was a currency expert. Burkhard Heim's father was a high-ranking official of Deutsche Bank during World War II. The stranger arrived accompanied by a German whom we had met once during one of Burkhard's lectures in Zurich, and who had invited us to his home on one occasion. Even then, I had a bad feeling, and when we were alone for a moment, I whispered in Burkhard's ear, "Be careful." Of all people, this man was now standing in front of us, and the American actually dared to offer Burkhard the equivalent of 300 Mark per month if he would work for him. 300 Deutsche Mark, even converted to today's currency values, this was ridiculous. It was back then the wage of a worker. Burkhard laughed and said no, to which the other, still brazen, replied that he was like a little boy being offered ice cream only to refuse it. With their heads bowed, the two finally left. Later, we learned that one of them ended up in prison because he had traveled around Germany with the intention of making money by handing out tips and pocketing large sums for himself. So Heim's caution turned out to be good intuition of his wife, but his spontaneous refute was motivated by something else than the height of the salary. Illobrand von Ludwiger, who wrote Heim's biography and knew him personally for many years, he wrote that Burkhard Heim disliked the Americans. This was due to his wartime experience. For him, the Americans were those who bombed the German cities to rubble, intentionally killing hundreds of thousands of civilians. and later styling themselves as the heroes who liberated us. No political or historical judgment from my side, it's bygones from me, but Burkhard Heim, he had been in the middle of it and he felt that way. And that was his motive. So this Herald Tribune article was clearly written under the assumption that there were negotiations and these 300 mark were part of it, but the journalist understood or presumed or he was thinking it was a done deal already and wrote accordingly. The fact that Martin Company acted with such dubious people either showed that they weren't working professionally in their HR department, trying to cheat Heim with such a small paycheck, or they didn't take him seriously. But it might as well be that they were simply unlucky with one specific agent. By the way, that agent might as well have been not from Martin Company, but from the CIA itself. Same reflection that would do on their kind of work style. Back in the 50s, we know for sure that the CIA was actively discrediting witnesses of UFO incidents, making materials and documents disappear, so they definitely weren't above playing dirty. So this was the debunking of that myth that Heim was at a time working for Martin Company. I hope the Americans watching this aren't too disappointed. If Heim had gotten a serious offer and if he hadn't harbored an ill will towards the Americans, history might have turned out differently. If you want to actively participate on research on Heim theory, get access to original sources, documents, even some translations nowadays available, and engage with others interested in the same topic, we have a growing community of physicists and other professionals on Discord. If you want to join, simply click on the link in the video description or write an email. I wish you all the clarity about all information, all news, however complex, however unusual, you encounter in 6 dimensions and in color.